Well guys, we did it. Mission Impossible is over. The franchise has finally reached its ultimate conclusion with this year's The Final Reckoning, and, well, here we are. Look, before I go any further into this review, I need to preface this by saying that I am maybe the biggest Mission Impossible fan that I know in my everyday life. I just love this franchise. I've grown up with it. I rewatch the movies all the time. When I went into this year knowing that The Final Reckoning was going to be my most anticipated movie of the year, which it was. You can see I've decorated the set a little bit. I've got my Mission Impossible 1 to 5 collection up there. That's my steelbook for Fallout, and then my steelbook for Dead Reckoning. I just love this franchise, and I have been so excited for this movie, not only the entire year, but for like the past 2 weeks, you know, in the run-up to this movie releasing. My partner will tell you I've been annoying her non-stop by doing Mission Impossible references, talking about the films. I've been rewatching them, and no matter what I was doing, whether it was cooking, cleaning, getting dressed, in the shower, I've been humming that Mission Impossible theme just on repeat non-stop. It's just been non-stop in my head. Even in work, I've just been walking around my work just to do. Like, it's just been there. It's been there the whole time. So going into, like, you need to understand, going into this movie, I was beyond excited. The trailers looked amazing. My hype levels were through the fucking roof. I was literally seated 4 years ago just waiting for this movie to come out. And now I've seen it. Like, I sat through the whole thing. Oh, I'm a little disappointed. Now look, I realise after saying all that, my expectations for this movie may have been a little bit too high. Like, maybe I might have set myself up for a failure here, given how excited I was for the movie. And while that's certainly a possibility, like, I'm not going to rule that out, I do think there are some real genuine kind of flaws with this movie that I think a lot of people online are talking about, and I tend to agree with, that make this Final Reckoning film, while still a very good movie in its own right, and a movie I still very much enjoyed watching, it's certainly a flawed entry in this series. But look, I'm a positive guy, right? I want to talk about the positives, so I'm going to start off with that. First of all, Mr. Movies, the president of movies, Mr. Thomas Cruise. What an absolute legend you are, sir. I love this man. I respect this man. He may be a complete nutter. I'm aware of that. He is. As a movie star, unparalleled. Tom Cruise is fantastic in this movie in his final turn as Ethan Hunt, and I think Tom Cruise, you know, in the past few years of this franchise, you know, the sort of, I'd say from probably Ghost Protocol onwards, really was able to nail the character of Ethan Hunt, and I think that in this final film, he just delivers maybe his best performance of the franchise yet. He's kind of rivaled with Fallout. It's just a really strong performance from Tom Cruise. He's really great. His commitment is obviously unquestionable, and the lengths he goes to for our own entertainment cannot be questioned. He is absolutely a fantastic throughout the entire franchise and throughout the entire runtime of The Final Reckoning. And of course, when I talk about his commitment to the film and everything he does, I am of course talking about the crazy action scenes that make this franchise famous for what they are, and the fact that Tom Cruise will do whatever it takes to deliver those action sequences as practically and as realistically as possible. And in The Final Reckoning, we get two major action sequences that you would have seen snippets of in the trailers that really take Tom Cruise to like the whole next level. Given the fact that this man is like 62, it's crazy that he's still doing this. I'm nearly 24 years old and I can't move like Tom Cruise. That's embarrassing. But the action sequences we get here with Tom Cruise, they are fantastic. You've got the submarine sequence, which you would have seen little snippets of, which the submarine sequence going into it, I wasn't expecting much from, to be honest. I kind of thought this was going to be more of a visual spectacle. And while it certainly is a visual spectacle, the intensity that came from this scene really shocked me. It's a little bit convoluted, as with everything in Mission Impossible, but the way that they film it, the way that the music is used, the way that it's shot, the way it's edited, it really makes you believe that, you know, Tom Cruise is really at these incredible depths and is having to escape the situation that he's in. Really well done, really well handled. We also, of course, have the very well marketed biplane sequence, which is kind of like the big action scene that this movie is really trying to sell itself on. And I was a little bit worried going into this sequence as well, because I thought the trailers have kind of shown a lot of this. Like, is there really going to be much left? The trailers have shown you nothing. Like, this sequence is absolutely mind-blowing. If you can see this movie in IMAX, make sure you do, because it's worth it for this sequence alone. It also really enhances the submarine sequence I mentioned, but the biplane sequence in IMAX, is transcendent. It's incredible. I think it's maybe the first time in this series since Ghost Protocol where I really felt a real sense of danger. Because in Ghost Protocol, you've got the scene, of course, where Ethan climbs the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and there's that shot when he first climbs out onto the building and the camera kind of follows him as it goes out, and you see the height. And as someone who used to live in Dubai, like, I have been in the Burj Khalifa, I was there at the time, like around the time they were filming this movie. It's so high. It's ridiculous. So the fact that Tom Cruise did that was insane. And I really felt the danger of that. And with this biplane sequence, you know, the aspect ratio changes, we go full screen, and you can just see the entire environment as he's flying around on this plane, you know, going all over it. It felt enthralling, dangerous, and exciting. And like I say, the IMAX ticket is worth the price of admission alone just for that scene. I must say, the movie slaps from about the submarine sequence onwards. Like, once you get to the bit where Ethan is on the submarine with Travel Tillman, the movie is just great from that. Like, the movie really settles into what I believe it was originally supposed to be, and it just feels like, you know, top tier Mission Impossible. It's fantastic. Like, from that point all the way up to the very, very end, the movie is great. It's just perfectly encapsulated what Mission Impossible is. You've got great action scenes, you've got great moments, it's a well shot, well edited movie from then on. It's just fantastic, and I loved that sort of last hour and a half especially. It's also a lovely ending, I must say. I think the ending of the movie is really well put together. As, you know, a lifelong fan of the franchise, I really loved the ending. It's, you know, something that is kind of subtle in a way, but it also leaves the door open for, you know, potentially more movies going forward if they wanted to do that. I'm really not sure if we're going to get another one at this point, especially with how much they've marketed this as, obviously, the final reckoning. I don't know if, and realistically, how much longer can Tom Cruise do this? I know he said he's not going to retire anytime soon, but the man is 62. He needs to calm down at some point. So I do like the ending. I think it's a nice little ending. It ties up everything nicely. And again, it does leave that door open for potentially more movies going forward if they wanted to go in that direction. Now, that's all my positives in the movie, obviously without talking about spoilers. I do have quite a few negatives with this movie, though, that I do want to address and I do want to talk about. Mainly, you know, I said a few seconds ago that the sort of last hour and a half, you know, that final act of the movie is really, really exciting and fantastic. The first, I'd say, hour to an hour and a half is a real slog. It's really messy, and I was really disappointed because it makes the film feel really stop-start. It makes it so that when you actually get to the submarine sequence, which, like I say, from that point on, the movie's fantastic, it kind of makes you feel like you've wasted a lot of time. And I was really disappointed with that because, you know, that first hour, that setup, you know, even like the opening, where when you get to the opening title sequence, you know, normally those sequences in every Mission Impossible movie are so incredibly exciting, but here it's just kind of tepid. And you get to the sequence of the opening titles, and the opening titles are great, of course, but it just didn't feel like it built to it and earned it in the way that the other movies do. This film relies so heavily on flashbacks to the previous, not only the previous Mission Impossible movie, but also the entire franchise. It feels incredibly fan-servicey, and as someone who is a huge fan of this franchise, I genuinely don't have a problem with that. Like, if they want to flashback to previous films and do loads of references and, you know, flashbacks, cameos, whatever, to previous Mission Impossible movies, in concept, I really don't have an issue with that. But in execution here, it just felt like they were padding out this first hour because they were just presuming that audiences either A, haven't seen the previous films, or B, wouldn't remember the previous films. So they just absolutely hammer you with these sequences to flashbacks to the first movie, to the third movie, to the seventh movie. Like, there's all these different things flashing back, forward, and backwards. And it's very, very jarring. Like, there's a lot to it. And, you know, the movie does also do a lot of things of, like, connecting the dots from particularly the first film. They also answer a big question from the third movie, which was left unanswered, which I didn't love. They also tie a character from 7 and 8 to the first movie, which I thought was interesting but kind of unnecessary, and didn't really add anything to the movie. Like, they confirmed that this character is one thing and then they said it was another, and it just didn't really change anything for that character or the story or the film or even anything to do with the first movie. It just felt a bit okay. So there's a lot of stuff like that throughout that first hour and a half or so that just really bring the movie down, and it just kind of leaves you feeling a little bit empty, you know, by the halfway mark. Also, I really wasn't a fan of the dialogue and the script in this movie because it's really repetitive. As I said, the flashbacks and stuff is repetitive in and of itself, but the dialogue in this movie, they just repeat the same stuff again and again and again, and it feels like the audience is just getting, whacked over the head with this stuff because the studio is presuming that we haven't seen Dead Reckoning. And it's really strange because you've got dialogue about, saving people who you'll never meet. That comes up about 10 times. Like, that line comes up about 10 times throughout the movie. They talk about, obviously, the entity and Gabriel hundreds of times, which, that became a bit of a meme in the last movie, but it is even worse in this one. It's just really strange, and I just felt like every time I heard one of these lines repeated another time, I was just like, we don't need to do this again. And as I suggested, the film kind of presumes that you haven't seen Dead Reckoning, and I'm guessing this is because Dead Reckoning kind of underperformed a couple of years ago. Not to say the movie bombed, I think it did over $500 million or something like that, so not a bomb by any stretch of the imagination. Most films would kill for that amount of money, but it obviously was lower than some of the previous films. But the film just, again, presumes you haven't seen Dead Reckoning, so the first, hour and a half is basically spent explaining what happened in Dead Reckoning to catch you up. And then, like I say, once you get to the submarine sequence, that's when the final reckoning truly starts. That's when it actually kicks into gear. So you kind of waste so much time in that first hour and a half catching people up, where it just felt unnecessary. If people wanted to watch the last movie, they would have watched it. And as someone who, obviously I saw it when it came out, I rewatched it the night before the final reckoning. I was like, I've seen all this, I know all this, I don't need to go through this again. It just feels really, really repetitive. And it also makes the movie feel too long, because this film is nearly 3 hours long, which is about the same length as the previous movie, but it's an hour and a half of it is unnecessary. A lot of it is anyway, and that's really frustrating because you've got a movie that, could have been cut down significantly and honestly would have been a whole lot better. And it's not to say that I have a problem with the movie's length, because if the movie was 3 hours of the quality that the back half is, fantastic. I said on Twitter, I will take 4 hours of this movie if it was that quality. But they spend so much time wasting on catching the audience up that it kind of makes the whole movie feel a bit too long, in all honesty. Now, in fairness, similar to Dead Reckoning, this movie might have had an impact from the writer's strike. This movie was, smack bang in production of that. So maybe, some of the writing and the dialogue might have been an impact from that. But while I sympathize with that, it's also, this is still a review at the end of the day, and it just, as a viewer, as a fan, as a critic, I just didn't love the dialogue in the movie. On the whole, though, I think that Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is still a really solid film in the Mission Impossible series. I personally had a really good time watching it. Again, that first hour and a half is a bit rough, it's a bit of a slog, and I feel like on rewatch, it's just going to get worse and worse for me. But that back half is absolutely fantastic, and as a Mission Impossible fan, if you like this series, it's worth the price of admission for the ticket just for that final act alone and for that final action sequence with the biplane. It's really, really good stuff. It's great Mission Impossible stuff that you've come to expect from this franchise. You've just got to get through kind of a slog of the first hour, which is a real shame. But it's a fun movie, it's a great ending, and as a fan, I was satisfied, if a little disappointed. But what did you guys think about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning? Make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, because I've seen a lot of conflicting things about this movie. Some people are, absolutely loving it and saying it's the best franchise and it's the best movie in the franchise and whatnot, but some people are really, really disappointed. Again, I wanted to love this movie. I was fully expecting to come out of this being like, that was the best movie of the series, it's the best movie of the year, I'm here for it. And while I still loved it, had a great time with it, it didn't quite reach those same heights, and for me, it kind of sits in the middle of the Mission Impossible movies. It's definitely the weakest of Christopher McQuarrie's Mission Impossible movies. So while I still found it a great experience and I enjoyed watching it, it is just a little bit disappointing for me. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more movie and TV content like this, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.